The coffee had gone cold hours ago, but Kira kept sipping it anyway. Her eyes burned from staring at the sensor displays for the past 12 hours, but someone had to monitor the deep space channels. Talos 7 might be a boring rim world, but it served as an early warning system for the entire sector. The Coalition had been peaceful for 300 years. 7 major species worked together under one banner, sharing technology and resources. Wars were things of the past, settled through diplomatic channels and trade agreements. The galaxy had never been more stable or prosperous. That was about to change. The sensor array picked up something strange at the edge of detection range. Kira rubbed her tired eyes and looked again. The readings made no sense. A massive object was moving through space, but it did not match any known ship design in the database. Its energy signature was completely unknown. She ran the scan 3 more times. Each result was the same. Something huge was out there, heading toward the core systems at incredible speed. The object measured nearly 5 kilometers in length, larger than any Coalition vessel ever built. Its hull seemed to absorb sensor beams instead of reflecting them back. Kira called her supervisor immediately. Within minutes, the small monitoring station buzzed with activity. Senior analysts arrived to study the readings, but none could explain what they were seeing. The object moved faster than any known propulsion system allowed. Its design was unlike anything in Coalition space. The news traveled up the chain of command quickly. Admiral Voss received the report while reviewing supply manifests in his office. He set down his datapad and stared at the sensor readings. In 40 years of service, he had never seen anything like this. The implications were disturbing. Emergency meetings were called across Coalition space. Military commanders gathered in secure communication channels, trying to understand what they faced. The object continued moving toward populated systems, showing no signs of slowing down. Its path would take it through 3 major trade routes and past 2 heavily populated worlds. Scientists worked frantically to analyze the limited data. The ship's materials were unknown, composed of alloys that did not exist in any Coalition database. Its energy output was massive, suggesting power systems far beyond current technology. Most disturbing of all, it seemed to be scanning Coalition space as it traveled. The military prepared for the worst. Fleet commanders received orders to move their ships into defensive positions. Orbital defense platforms powered up weapon systems that had not been used in decades. The Coalition had grown soft during the long peace, but they still remembered how to fight. Dr. Walsh led a team of xenobiologists in studying the vessel's design. The ship showed no artistic elements or cultural decorations that usually marked civilized species. It was built purely for function, with heavy armor plating and what appeared to be multiple weapon systems. Everything about it suggested a military purpose. The ship's path became clearer as it approached the inner systems. It was not randomly wandering through space, but following a deliberate course toward the Coalition's core worlds. Someone was piloting it with clear intent. The question was who and what they wanted. Coalition intelligence agencies searched their databases for any species capable of building such a vessel. None of the known spacefaring races had the technology or resources required. The ship represented a level of advancement that should not exist in the galaxy. It was as if someone had been secretly developing advanced technology for centuries. Fear spread through Coalition leadership. They had grown comfortable with their place as the dominant force in the galaxy. The idea that another species might be more advanced was terrifying. Their entire worldview depended on being the most technologically sophisticated civilization in known space. The ship's hull design became more apparent as it came closer to Coalition sensors. It was angular and brutal, with no wasted space or decorative elements. Weapon ports lined its surface, suggesting firepower that could devastate entire fleets. Its engines produced energy readings that defied understanding. Communication attempts failed repeatedly. The ship ignored all standard greeting protocols and diplomatic channels. It transmitted no identification codes or statements of intent. The silence was more frightening than any threat could have been. Unknown enemies were always the most dangerous. As the ship approached the border of Coalition space, military forces scrambled to respond. Battleships that had served as ceremonial vessels for decades were hastily equipped with weapons and armor. Crews who had never seen combat prepared for the possibility of war. The ship finally stopped at the edge of the Kepler system, home to over 2 billion Coalition citizens. It took position near the system's outer planets and began conducting detailed scans of the entire area. Whatever its purpose, it was clearly studying Coalition technology and defenses. Admiral Voss gathered his staff for one final briefing before dispatching a diplomatic mission. The ship had made no hostile moves, but its presence was threat enough. Coalition forces were no match for something that advanced, and everyone knew it. Their only hope was that whoever controlled the ship was interested in peaceful contact. The mysterious vessel waited in the darkness of space, its weapons silent, but ready. Coalition citizens went about their daily lives, unaware that their entire civilization hung in the balance. The age of peace and prosperity was about to end, replaced by something far more dangerous. 300 years of stability had made the Coalition weak and complacent. They had forgotten that the galaxy was a dangerous place, full of unknown threats and hostile forces. The ship hanging at the edge of their space was a reminder that safety was always temporary. The crew of the unknown vessel watched Coalition movements with interest. They had been planning this moment for centuries, waiting for the right time to reveal themselves. The Coalition was about to learn that they were not alone in the galaxy, and that some neighbors were far more dangerous than others. The detection of the massive ship sent shockwaves through Coalition space. Emergency broadcasts warned civilian ships to avoid the area. Military vessels took defensive positions around major population centers. The galaxy held its breath, waiting to see what would happen next. Everything was about to change. The peaceful galaxy that had existed for 3 centuries was about to be replaced by something far more chaotic and dangerous. The unknown ship represented the end of one era and the beginning of another. The Coalition would never be the same again. The diplomatic vessel Harmony's Edge moved slowly through the void, its hull gleaming with the bright colors of the Coalition flag. Ambassador Thane stood in the observation deck, watching the massive unknown ship grow larger as they approached. Nothing in his 40 years of diplomatic service had prepared him for this moment. The ship before them was a monster of metal and purpose. Its dark hull absorbed light, making it appear like a hole in space itself. Weapon ports lined its surface, in perfect rows, each one larger than the Harmony's Edge's main engines. The vessel radiated menace even while remaining perfectly still. Thane's communication officer worked frantically at her console, broadcasting peaceful intentions in every known language. Standard diplomatic protocols called for immediate response from any civilized species. The unknown ship remained silent, its weapons tracking the diplomatic vessel with mechanical precision. The Coalition had spent centuries perfecting peaceful contact procedures. Every first contact scenario had been planned and rehearsed. Diplomatic immunity was sacred throughout the galaxy. No civilized species had ever fired on a diplomatic vessel flying under the proper signals. The waiting was worse than combat. Thane's crew stood at their stations, following procedures that suddenly seemed inadequate. The unknown ship dwarfed them completely, its mass equivalent to an entire Coalition battle group. If it chose to attack, the diplomatic mission would be over in seconds. Finally, the silence broke. The ship's response came in broken Coalition standard, the words harsh and unfamiliar. "You will withdraw. This is human space now." The transmission ended abruptly, leaving the diplomatic team in stunned silence. Human, the word sent shockwaves through the bridge crew. According to all historical records, humans were a primitive species that had destroyed themselves over 1,000 years ago. Their homeworld had been surveyed and found to be a radioactive wasteland. The entire species was listed as extinct in Coalition databases. Thane composed himself quickly. Diplomatic training kicked in, overriding his shock and confusion. If humans had somehow survived, This could be the most important first contact in galactic history. He ordered his crew to request a meeting under standard diplomatic protocols. The response came after several tense hours. The human ship would allow a small delegation aboard, but any sign of hostile intent would result in immediate destruction. The threat was delivered in the same emotionless tone, as if the speaker was discussing the weather. The shuttle bay of the human ship was unlike anything in Coalition space. The walls were bare metal, functional, and cold. No decorative elements softened the harsh industrial design. Everything was built for war, from the automated defense systems to the blast doors that sealed with mechanical precision. Captain Reed met them at the airlock, flanked by 2 guards in powered armor. The humans looked exactly as described in ancient texts, but their technology was far beyond anything the Coalition possessed. Their weapons were compact and efficient, designed for maximum lethality. Reed's appearance was unsettling. He was tall and lean, with the kind of scars that came from real combat. His uniform was practical rather than ceremonial, marked with insignia that meant nothing to Coalition observers. His eyes were cold and calculating, studying the diplomatic team like potential threats. The meeting room was Spartan and functional. No comfortable seating or refreshments were offered. Reed sat across from Thane at a metal table, his hands folded calmly in front of him. The message was clear. This was not a social visit. Thane began with standard diplomatic pleasantries, but Reed cut him off with a gesture. "We know who you are and what you want. The question is whether you are smart enough to accept the new reality." His voice carried the weight of absolute authority. The human captain explained their situation with brutal efficiency. Humanity had indeed faced near extinction, but the survivors had fled to the galaxy's edge rather than dying on their poisoned homeworld. They had spent centuries rebuilding, learning, and preparing for this moment. They had watched Coalition expansion with growing anger. Human space had been claimed and divided among alien species without consultation or consideration. Worlds that had once been human colonies were now Coalition territories. The slight would not be forgotten or forgiven. The technology gap was staggering. While the Coalition had focused on peaceful expansion and trade, humanity had spent 1,000 years perfecting the art of war. Their ships were faster, stronger, and more deadly than anything in Coalition space. They had studied Coalition weaknesses through intercepted communications and hidden observation posts. Reed made humanity's position clear. They were not interested in joining the Coalition or negotiating territorial agreements. They wanted their ancestral territories back, along with compensation for centuries of occupation. Any resistance would be met with overwhelming force. The diplomatic team tried to explain Coalition law and territorial rights, but Reed dismissed their arguments with contempt. "Your laws mean nothing to us. We never agreed to your authority over human space." The words were delivered with finality that brooked no argument. The tour of the ship was deliberately intimidating. Human technology was centuries ahead of Coalition standards. Their computers were faster, their weapons more powerful, and their defenses impenetrable. The ship's crew moved with military precision, each member trained for combat. The engine room was particularly impressive. Human propulsion systems operated on principles that Coalition scientists had never imagined. The power output was enormous, explaining how the ship could travel at impossible speeds. The implications for space warfare were terrifying. Thane's final attempt at negotiation met with polite but firm refusal. Humanity had spent too long in exile to accept anything less than full restoration of their former territories. They had the strength to take what they wanted, and they were prepared to use it. The return journey to Coalition space was silent and tense. The diplomatic team had failed completely, bringing back news that would shatter the peaceful galaxy. Humanity was not only alive but had become a military power beyond Coalition comprehension. Reed's final words echoed in Thane's mind. "Tell your leaders that humanity has returned." "We have been patient long enough." The threat was clear, even if the timeline remained unknown. The Coalition would have to choose between surrender and war. The Harmony's Edge transmitted its report as soon as it reached Coalition space. Emergency. Sessions were called across the galaxy as leaders tried to process the impossible news. The extinct species had returned, and they were not interested in peaceful coexistence. The age of coalition dominance was over. Humanity had spent centuries preparing for this moment, and they were ready to reclaim their place in the galaxy. The only question was how much blood would be spilled in the process. Fear spread through coalition territories as the news leaked to civilian populations. The species that had once dismissed humans as primitive savages now faced the possibility of being conquered by them. The galaxy was about to learn that some enemies were too dangerous to ignore. The laboratory hummed with activity as Dr. Nora examined the metal fragment recovered from the human vessel. Under the microscope, the material revealed a structure unlike anything in Coalition databases. The alloy was impossibly dense yet lightweight. With properties that defied conventional physics, intelligence reports flooded in from across the galaxy. Human ships were appearing everywhere. Not just the massive dreadnoughts, but smaller vessels that moved like phantoms through space. They avoided direct confrontation, instead gathering information about Coalition defenses and troop movements. The Coalition's military commanders gathered in the war room on Central Command, their faces grim as they studied the tactical displays. Every report brought worse news. Human technology was not just advanced but completely alien in its approach. Their ships operated on principles that Coalition scientists had never considered. General Hayes appeared on screens throughout Coalition space, his message broadcast on every available channel. His uniform was simple but clean, bearing insignia that suggested high rank. His face was weathered but determined, the look of a man who had seen too much war to be intimidated by the prospect of more. The human commander's words were direct and uncompromising. Humanity had spent centuries watching Coalition expansion, learning their tactics and studying their weaknesses. They had intercepted communications, monitored trade routes, and prepared for this moment with patience born of necessity. The Coalition had grown soft during the long peace. Their military was designed for ceremony and patrol duties, not real combat. Their ships were beautiful but fragile, built for exploration and diplomacy rather than war. They had forgotten the fundamental truth that violence was the final arbiter of all disputes. Dr. Nora's analysis revealed the true scope of the technology gap. Human weapons fired solid projectiles accelerated to near-light speed, punching through Coalition shields like paper. Their armor was made from materials that could withstand direct hits from Coalition battleship cannons. Their computers processed information at speeds that made Coalition systems seem primitive. The first major engagement came at the Proxima system, where a Coalition patrol fleet encountered 3 human destroyers. The battle lasted less than 20 minutes. The human ships moved with impossible speed and precision, their weapons striking with lethal accuracy. The Coalition vessels were destroyed without inflicting any damage in return. Human tactics were ruthless and effective. They targeted command ships first, creating chaos in Coalition formations. Their weapons were designed to penetrate armor and destroy critical systems with single hits. They showed no mercy to retreating enemies, pursuing and destroying them with mechanical efficiency. The psychological impact was devastating. Coalition forces had never faced an enemy that could match their technology, let alone surpass it. The idea that humans had developed such advanced weapons while living in exile was terrifying. It suggested a level of dedication and focus that the Coalition had never possessed. Military analysts worked frantically to understand human ship design. The vessels were built around massive weapon systems with minimal crew quarters and life support systems. They were warships in the truest sense, designed for combat and nothing else. Form followed function in every aspect of their construction. The human fleet composition was unlike anything in Coalition space. They had no support vessels or supply ships, suggesting a level of technological sophistication that eliminated the need for traditional logistics. Their ships could operate independently for extended periods, making them nearly impossible to defeat through conventional means. Coalition attempts to form battle groups met with disaster. Human ships appeared, and disappeared at will, striking at weak points and vanishing before reinforcements could arrive. They had perfected hit-and-run tactics, using their superior speed and firepower to maximum advantage. The propaganda broadcasts continued, explaining humanity's history to the galaxy. They had indeed faced nuclear war, but the survivors had learned from their mistakes. They had united under military rule, focusing all resources on survival and eventual return to the galaxy. Every human was a soldier, every ship a weapon of war. The Coalition's member species began to panic as human fleets appeared in their home systems. The ships did not attack immediately, but instead broadcast surrender demands. The message was always the same: submit to human authority or face total destruction. Many worlds chose surrender rather than fight an unwinnable war. Human ground forces were equally impressive. Their soldiers wore powered armor that made them walking tanks, immune to most Coalition weapons. They moved with precision and coordination, supported by advanced technology that gave them overwhelming advantages on the battlefield. The siege of Meridian demonstrated human military doctrine. They surrounded the planet with a fleet of dreadnoughts, then landed invasion forces at strategic points. The Coalition garrison was well equipped and motivated, but they were no match for human tactics and technology. Colonel Banks led the assault on the planetary capital, his forces moving through the city like a machine. Human weapons were designed for maximum efficiency, capable of destroying buildings and vehicles with single shots. Their armor protected them from Coalition counterattacks, making them nearly invulnerable. The battle for Meridian lasted 3 days. The Coalition forces fought bravely but were systematically destroyed by superior firepower and tactics. Human losses were minimal, demonstrating the overwhelming advantage of their technology. The planet surrendered after its defenses were reduced to rubble. The pattern repeated across Coalition space. Human forces would appear, demand surrender, then destroy any resistance with overwhelming force. They showed no interest in negotiation or compromise, offering only 2 choices: submission or death. Most worlds chose to live under human rule. Rather than face destruction, the Coalition's grand strategy crumbled as member species began making separate peace deals with humanity. The unity that had held the galaxy together for centuries dissolved under the pressure of human military might. Each species prioritized their own survival over collective defense. Admiral Cross commanded the human naval offensive, her fleet of dreadnoughts moving through space like harbingers of doom. Each vessel was capable of destroying entire Coalition task forces, their weapons designed to penetrate any known defense. The sight of human ships approaching was enough to make most enemies surrender without fighting. The technology demonstrations were deliberate and terrifying. Human ships would destroy asteroids with single shots, showing Coalition observers the futility of resistance. Their weapons could reach across entire star systems, making traditional naval tactics obsolete. The message was clear: opposition was suicide. The Coalition's last hope lay in their secret weapons programs, but even these proved inadequate. Human intelligence was too good, their technology too advanced. Every Coalition advantage was quickly countered by human innovation. The technological gap was simply too large to bridge. The war had become a rout. Human forces advanced on all fronts, their victory inevitable. The Coalition that had ruled the galaxy for centuries was being dismantled by a species they had thought extinct. The age of human dominance was beginning, and nothing could stop it. Fear ruled Coalition space as human fleets approached the core worlds. The species that had once dismissed humanity as primitive savages now faced conquest by their superior technology and military might. The galaxy was about to learn that some enemies were too dangerous to underestimate. The refugee ships streamed away from Epsilon Prime in a steady flow, their holds packed with civilians fleeing the approaching human fleet. The planet's orbital defenses had been destroyed in the first hour of the attack, leaving the population helpless against human ground forces. Coalition unity cracked under the pressure of human military might. The member species that had worked together for centuries began prioritizing their own survival over collective defense. Trade agreements were abandoned, mutual defense pacts dissolved. and ancient rivalries resurfaced as panic spread through the galaxy. Admiral Cross stood on the bridge of her flagship, watching the tactical display with satisfaction. The human fleet had grown to over 200 vessels, each one a masterpiece of military engineering. They moved through space like a pack of predators, hunting coalition forces with ruthless efficiency. The Battle of Tau Ceti had been a massacre. The coalition's Fifth Fleet had tried to make a stand in the system's asteroid belt, using the rocky debris as cover for their ships. Human forces had simply fired through the asteroids, their weapons vaporizing rock and metal alike. The coalition fleet was destroyed without slowing the human advance. Colonel Banks surveyed the ruins of the coalition fortress on Meridian, his powered armor gleaming in the afternoon sun. The siege had lasted only 3 days, but the message was clear to anyone watching. Human ground forces were unstoppable, their technology and tactics overwhelming any defense the coalition could mount. The psychological warfare was as effective as the military campaign. Human broadcasts showed coalition cities burning, their defenses crumbling before human weapons. The message was simple: resistance meant death, surrender meant survival. Most worlds chose to live under human rule rather than face destruction. The coalition's military doctrine had been built around defensive warfare, using superior numbers and fortified positions to wear down attackers. Human tactics made these strategies obsolete. Their ships could strike from impossible distances, their weapons penetrating any armor the coalition possessed. Trade routes collapsed as human fleets interdicted commercial shipping. The galaxy's economy, built on peaceful exchange between species, ground to a halt. Entire sectors were cut off from supplies, their populations facing starvation as human forces tightened their grip on strategic systems. The Rigel system fell after a brief siege, its population surrendering after witnessing the destruction of their orbital habitats. Human forces had simply opened fire on the structures, killing millions in seconds. The survivors were relocated to the planet's surface, where they would serve as laborers under human supervision. Coalition scientists worked desperately to develop countermeasures to human technology, but their efforts were futile. Human weapons operated on principles that coalition science had never explored. Their ships moved faster than thought possible, their armor stronger than any material in coalition databases. The propaganda war was equally one-sided. Human broadcasts told the story of their exile and suffering, painting the coalition as invaders who had stolen human territory. Many alien populations began to believe that humanity deserved to reclaim their former worlds, making resistance movements less effective. General Hayes appeared on screens throughout coalition space, his uniform crisp and his manner calm. He spoke of human patience and coalition arrogance, of centuries spent watching alien species divide up human territory. The time for talk was over, he said. Now came the reckoning. The assault on the coalition naval base at Kepler Station was swift and brutal. Human forces emerged from hyperspace in perfect formation, their weapons already locked onto target. The base's defenses were overwhelmed in minutes, its garrison slaughtered before they could mount effective resistance. Human ground troops moved through coalition cities like ghosts, their advanced equipment making them nearly invisible to conventional sensors. They struck at command centers and communication hubs, paralyzing coalition forces before they could organize effective resistance. The speed and precision of their attacks was terrifying. The coalition's member species began making separate peace deals with humanity, abandoning their allies to save themselves. The Altarian Republic was the first to surrender, offering tribute and territory in exchange for protection. Others quickly followed, leaving the coalition leadership isolated and powerless. The siege of Vega Prime lasted 2 weeks, the longest resistance humanity had faced. The planet's governor refused all surrender demands, declaring that coalition forces would fight to the last soldier. Human forces simply bombarded the planet from orbit, reducing its cities to rubble before landing ground troops to secure the ruins. Coalition morale collapsed as news of each defeat spread through their territories. The military that had kept peace for centuries was being systematically destroyed by an enemy they had never imagined. Desertions increased as soldiers abandoned their posts to protect their families. The human fleet's composition revealed the true scope of their preparation. They had no hospital ships, no supply vessels, no support craft of any kind. Every ship was a weapon designed for maximum destructive potential. The implications were clear. They had come to conquer, not to negotiate. The Battle of Volf 359 demonstrated human tactical superiority. Coalition forces had prepared an elaborate ambush, using the system's binary stars to mask their approach. Human sensors detected the trap immediately, and their response was devastating. The Coalition task force was destroyed in less than an hour. Civilian populations began welcoming human forces as liberators rather than conquerors. The Coalition's bureaucratic inefficiency had bred resentment across the galaxy, and many species preferred human military rule to alien administration. The conquerors found themselves governing willing subjects, rather than rebellious populations. The Coalition's last major fleet gathered at the Centauri system, commanded by Admiral Voss himself. The force included ships from all member species, their combined firepower representing the Coalition's final hope. They waited for the human fleet to arrive, knowing that defeat meant the end of their civilization. Admiral Cross approached the system with her full fleet, 300 human warships moving in perfect formation. The tactical display showed Coalition forces arranged in defensive positions around the system's planets, their weapons powered and ready. It would be the final battle of the war. The engagement began at maximum range, Coalition ships firing everything they had at the approaching human fleet. Their weapons struck harmlessly against human shields. The energy absorbed or deflected without causing damage. The human response was swift and lethal, their projectile weapons punching through Coalition armor like paper. The battle lasted 6 hours, ending with the complete destruction of the Coalition fleet. Admiral Voss died with his ship, refusing to surrender even as his forces were systematically annihilated. The human victory was total, their losses minimal despite facing the Coalition's strongest force. The path to the Coalition capital was now clear. Human forces regrouped and prepared for the final assault, their victory assured by technological superiority and tactical excellence. The galaxy that had dismissed humanity as extinct was about to fall under human rule. Fear gripped Coalition space as human fleets approached the core worlds. The species that had once thought themselves masters of the galaxy now faced conquest by their technological superiors. The age of Coalition dominance was ending. Replaced by something far more dangerous and efficient, the war had become a foregone conclusion. Human forces advanced on all fronts, their victory inevitable. The Coalition that had ruled the galaxy for centuries was being dismantled by a species they had underestimated. The galaxy was about to learn that some enemies were too determined to defeat. The massive human dreadnoughts surrounded the Coalition capital world of Centralis like dark monuments to victory. Their hulls blocked out sections of the system's star, casting shadows across the planet's surface as millions of inhabitants looked up at their new masters. The siege had lasted only hours before the planetary government surrendered. President Stone stood in the former Coalition council chambers, his uniform simple but spotless. The ornate decorations that had once symbolized galactic unity lay scattered on the floor, replaced by functional human equipment. The transition of power had been swift and decisive, with no room for ceremony or tradition. The surrender documents were signed by the remaining Coalition leaders, their hands shaking as they formally ended 3 centuries of galactic government. The terms were harsh but clear: complete submission to human authority, payment of war reparations, and the return of all territories claimed from former human space. The establishment of the human galactic empire was announced simultaneously across all inhabited worlds. Stone's speech was broadcast in every major language, his words carried by the same communication networks that had once spread Coalition propaganda. The age of alien rule was over, replaced by human efficiency and determination. The transition proved surprisingly smooth. Human administrators arrived on conquered worlds with detailed plans for governance, having studied Coalition bureaucracy for centuries. They eliminated redundant agencies, streamlined decision-making processes, and replaced corrupt officials with competent military officers. Many former coalition worlds welcomed the change. The old government had been slow and inefficient, bogged down by competing interests and bureaucratic inertia. Human rule was harsh but fair, with clear laws and swift punishment for violations. Crime rates dropped dramatically as human military police took control of major population centers. Trade resumed under human protection, with merchant vessels escorted by human warships. The galaxy's economy, devastated by the war, began to recover as human efficiency replaced coalition red tape. New trade routes opened, connecting previously isolated systems to the growing human empire. Dr. Ellis established the Imperial Science Council, combining human military technology with coalition theoretical knowledge. Research programs that had been stalled by coalition politics for decades suddenly received unlimited funding and resources. Technological advancement accelerated as human practical thinking merged with alien scientific creativity. The former coalition military was disbanded and restructured under human command. Alien officers who proved their loyalty were retained, but command positions went to humans who had demonstrated competence in battle. The new Imperial Navy was smaller, but far more effective than the old coalition fleet. Resistance movements emerged on some worlds, but they were quickly crushed by human intelligence networks. The rebels found themselves outmatched by human surveillance technology and military tactics. Public executions of resistance leaders sent clear messages to potential troublemakers across the empire that the human approach to governance was radically different from coalition methods. Decisions were made quickly and implemented without delay. Local governors reported directly to sector commanders, who answered to Stone himself. The chain of command was clear and absolute, with no room for political maneuvering or bureaucratic delays. Cultural preservation programs were established to maintain the diversity of alien civilizations under human rule. Stone understood that governing a multi-species empire required respect for local customs and traditions. Alien cultures were protected as long as they did not interfere with human authority or imperial law. The education system was reformed to include human history and values alongside traditional subjects. Children across the galaxy learned about humanity's exile and return, understanding that their new rulers had earned their position through strength and determination. The curriculum emphasized duty, efficiency, and loyalty to the empire. Economic policies favored worlds that had surrendered peacefully while penalizing those that had resisted. The former coalition capital became a model of human efficiency. Its economy rebuilt around military production and technological research. Other worlds followed suit, adapting their industries to serve imperial needs. The human military machine continued to grow, with new shipyards constructed across the galaxy. Each vessel was more advanced than the last, incorporating lessons learned from the conquest. The Imperial fleet became the most powerful force in galactic history, capable of projecting human power across vast distances. Stone's coronation as emperor was a simple ceremony, attended by human military leaders and selected alien dignitaries. The crown was a simple metal band, symbolizing the practical nature of human rule. The message was clear: the empire was built on strength, not ceremony. The galactic communication network was rebuilt under human control, with improved technology that connected every world in the empire. Information flowed freely in both directions, allowing the central government to monitor local conditions, while keeping citizens informed of imperial policies. Justice was swift and impartial under human rule. Courts operated according to human military law, with judges appointed by imperial authority. The legal system was simplified, with clear punishments for specific crimes. Corruption was eliminated through regular audits and harsh penalties for officials who abused their positions. The transformation was remarkable. Within a year of the conquest, the galaxy was more prosperous and peaceful than it had been under coalition rule. Human efficiency had replaced alien bureaucracy, creating a system that served the needs of all species while maintaining order and stability, the former coalition species found themselves adapting to human leadership with surprising ease. Many had grown tired of the old system's inefficiency and corruption, preferring human directness to alien political games. The Empire provided security and prosperity in exchange for loyalty and obedience. The human dreadnoughts that had once caused panic now served as guardians of the new order. They patrolled trade routes and defended imperial worlds from external threats. The sight of human warships became a symbol of protection rather than conquest, reassuring citizens that their new government was strong enough to protect them. Archaeological teams were dispatched to rediscover human history, excavating ruins on worlds that had been human colonies before the exile. These sites were transformed into museums and monuments, reminding the galaxy of humanity's long heritage and rightful place among the stars. The Imperial Academy was established to train the next generation of leaders, accepting students from all species while maintaining human command structure. The curriculum combined military training with administrative skills, producing officers capable of governing diverse populations with efficiency and fairness. The galaxy had entered a new age of stability and prosperity under human rule. The species that had once dismissed humanity as extinct now lived under their protection, benefiting from human technology and organization. The empire that had been built through conquest was maintained through competence and strength. The human return to galactic prominence was complete. They had risen from the ashes of near extinction to become the dominant force in the galaxy, proving that determination and preparation could overcome any obstacle. The age of human dominance had begun, and the galaxy was better for it. The transformation from coalition chaos to imperial order demonstrated the superiority of human leadership. The galaxy that had once been divided by competing interests was now united under human authority. Working together toward common goals, the future looked bright under the guidance of humanity's steady hand.